All right, so we are back for the second story of the night. There are some people speculating about the reason for the streams, and as I mentioned in the last one, there's a few reasons. Number one, to get the information out for you faster. I'm trying to keep them shorter because there are a lot of folks that complain about the longer videos. And they don't like the Friday stream, so we're trying to get the information a little bit faster, a little quicker, in a little bit of a shorter time span. Also, some of these topics are things that YouTube is not a fan of, and it's a lot easier to get the information out to you guys without YouTube suppressing it if I do it in a live stream. When you upload a video to YouTube, YouTube kind of like scans through it first to look for controversial topics or things that they don't really like. And if they find it, they flag your stuff. They don't notify your subscribers. They demonetize, blah, 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 all of that fun stuff. So we're trying to get around some of that. And if they demonetize or flag something, then they don't spread it as much. So that's something that we are trying to avoid. And actually, I'm going to set this to monetize right now so that they allow more people to see it. Okay. So the next topic that we're doing, this is, I almost did a video on this yesterday, and I'm really glad I didn't because this story has gotten even more complicated. It's really crazy stuff. So the process with the election, even though the AP and CNN and all of these places have called it for Biden at this point, technically speaking, no one has won the election until the results are certified. So there are some states that are going through recounts and things like this, but what happens when there is an election is the canvassers and the boards in the state and all of these people get together and decide whether or not the results can be certified. And then if they are certified, then that is technically when the electors place their votes. And that is technically when we know who actually won. Normally, there's not much of a discrepancy or there's not as much controversy around the election. So normally they just, do the votes and say, the popular vote and be like, okay, well, so this is how we calculate the electoral and they've got it and that's it. Obviously, with everything going on in this election, that is not the case. There are issues happening in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia. They found a whole bunch of missing GOP votes in Georgia, but then I just saw that now they're saying that Biden still has it. But the most interesting controversy, I think, is around Wayne County in Michigan. So Wayne County is the county that holds Detroit. And cancel culture raised its ugly head against two GOP canvassers who looked at all the results and looked at the ballots and said, well, gee, we can't certify this because of all the discrepancies. In fact, among the ballots, there were discrepancies in 71% of the county's precincts. The ballot counts in 71% of Wayne County's precincts did not match the voter rolls. That is a pretty big amount. Now, there is a Democrat, the Democrat colleagues on this board said that, well, it was a human error and that it would be irresponsible to not certify the results. And they said, critics said that the decision to not certify these votes would also be a direct affront on minority communities. Nevertheless, these two people, William Hartman and Monica Palmer, Monica Palmer is, I believe, the Republican chair for this group. They came together and they said, well, based on what they're seeing, this 71% discrepancy, they could not certify these results. They said, well, this has to be looked at closer. This needs to be investigated. And the period of time it took them to change their mind was approximately 2 hours. And that was because the minute they said, well, we need to look at this closer and can't certify it, all of the cancel culture folks came out of the woodwork and complained that it was just racism, started bringing up their children and publicly telling folks where their children went to school, doxing these people, making all sorts of horrible threats. So, of course, these people were under threat of violence. They were threatened with having their lives ruined. They were being doxxed. Their children were being doxxed, while people were saying, well, gee, I hope nothing happens to your children. So they ended up backing out and changing their votes to certify. And what's interesting is, of course, on Fox, they're talking about the allegations of racism, but you look at any other article about this story and about what's going on in Wayne County, none of the other news outlets, well, I won't say none, most of the other news outlets are not mentioning any of these allegations of racism or the doxing or the threats, any of that. They might mention it in passing and be like, oh, well, there was a couple of people that said it was racist, but, it's like one line in like the bottom of the article. But there were quite a few people that came out. And again, this is despite the fact that there were 71% of the precincts in this county had ballot counts that did not match the voter rolls. And in fact, there are currently 234 pages of sworn affidavits that raise allegations of fraud in the county. 234 pages. That's a lot of pages. Especially considering that, CNN, MSNBC, The Guardian, all of these outlets are saying there is no actual proof of voter fraud. There's no evidence of voter fraud. There's nothing substantial. I think that 234 pages in just one county in one state is pretty substantial. So, again, critics were saying that a refusal to certify these results was an affront on minority communities. So these are some of the folks and some of the things that they said. So this guy, Ned Stabler, who is a poll challenger in the county, said in a viral Zoom meeting, and I think it's even bizarre that a Zoom meeting could go viral, but he said, the Trump stain, the stain of racism that you, William Hartman and Monica Palmer, have covered yourself in is going to follow you throughout history. He continued that they would forever be known in southeastern Michigan as two racists who did something so unprecedented that they disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of Black voters in the city of Detroit. This is also assuming that all of those Black voters voted Democrat. And it's funny because I have been seeing some memes going around that has like a map of the United States. And it says, oh, what the voter map would look like if it was just, X group. And there's one specifically that says people of color, and the whole map is blue. And it says every person of color in the United States voted blue 100%. Well, I mean, that can't be true because there are plenty of folks that are Trump supporters that come from all walks of life and all races and all colors and creeds. We also have, even right here in Michigan, this guy, John James, was a Republican Senate candidate, and he happens to be Black, and he's a Republican, and he said it was great that these people were standing up. There's people like Kim Klacik out there, Thomas Sowell, all these different people out there that aren't Democrats or weren't ever Democrats. And I believe that Trump got a pretty substantial portion of the Hispanic vote, and they're considered people of color. But 100% all people of color voted for Biden. I mean, we heard him say it himself. If you don't vote for him, then you ain't Black. So anyways, Then Gretchen Whitmer, of course, the lovely Gretchen Whitmer, who is currently facing impeachment, by the way, also made a statement that said, in refusing to approve the results of the election in Wayne County, the 2 Republican members of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers have placed partisan politics above their legal duty to certify the election results. Partisan politics, I mean, that's looking at a 71% discrepancy and deciding not to investigate it and deciding that that's not an issue worthy of questioning. That's partisan politics. These people, by saying, well, we need to investigate this further and look at it, are actually doing their job properly by not certifying those results. But not certifying the results could delay the certification and could end up making Michigan null and void for Biden. And so that's why people in the state of Michigan are upset about it. We also had, and this is great, Rashida Tlaib went to Twitter because that's what members in the squad do. And again, she talked about putting politics above their duty to our residents. And she went on to say that suggesting that all of Wayne County can be certified except for Detroit is horrifyingly racist and a subversion of our democracy. But the thing is that's not quite what happened. In fact, what happened is that Monica Palmer, the Republican chair of the committee, reportedly said in regards to the initial vote that they did not have accurate information on the jurisdictions and that she would consider certifying election results for some jurisdictions except for Detroit and others with unexplained discrepancies, according to the Detroit News. So she didn't just say, these 2 canvassers didn't just say that they were going to, drop this county because Detroit was in it and they wanted to disenfranchise voters. No, they said, well, let's certify the jurisdictions that don't have discrepancies and take a closer look at the ones that do have discrepancies, which I think is pretty fair. But despite that fairness, these are some of the things that were said. Rashida Tlaib had a field day tweeting about this and retweeting about this. So she said that hundreds of Wayne County residents waited hours to give public comment, even though this is something that, again, took place over 2 hours. One after the other demanded our democracy is upheld, and the Board of Wayne County Canvassers came back and voted unanimously to certify. Well, gee, I wonder if the threats from BLM and Antifa and the doxing had anything to do with that. She also said that it was a racist attempt by the GOP to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters. And now, because Trump came out in support of it, now this impeached president wants these 2 to kiss the ring and steal the election. He lost, period. Stop being spineless. Focus on the pandemic. People are dying. Again, I think spineless would be looking at the fact that, again, 71% of precincts in that county had a discrepancy and saying, oh, no, we're not going to look at that. I mean, honestly, spineless is reversing their decision, quite frankly, and deciding to certify after all. We also saw again, she said that the attempt by the Michigan GOP to completely disenfranchise the voters of an 80% Black city shows how far they will go to destroy our republic using Jim Crow tactics. And what's interesting is because there was another tweet where she says it's an 85% Black city and not 80, so she's not getting her statistics right. Here's another one. Members of the GOP attempted to silence our voices by refusing to certify the election, but the people showed up and spoke up. Yes, by again threatening, doxing, and calling people racists. That's how they showed up. After hours of impassioned testimony calling out this blatant racism, the people refused to let that happen, but know that the work is far from done. This is from Michigan Liberation that she retweeted. She also retweeted this one. This says, in the 1950s, the state of Mississippi refused to let my father, a Korean War veteran, vote. They had ostensible cover, like poll taxes and literacy tests, but it was really about Jim Crow, racism. So what's it called in Wayne County when a white woman votes to decertify my vote? So he is comparing, again, concerns about voter roll discrepancies to Jim Crow. I don't really think that those two things are comparable. Jim Crow was awful. Seeing discrepancy in a voter roll and saying, we can't certify this, we need to investigate it, is doing your job as a canvasser. This we have Motor City Muckracker says Republicans' refusal to certify the Wayne County election underscores the lingering legacy of disenfranchisement. Decades after the Voting Rights Act, people in power are still trying to thwart the will of Black Americans. Oh, man. And then she went on, Rashida Tlaib again took to Twitter. She stopped retweeting for a little while to put out her own words. It's plain and simple. The Republican members of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers put politics above their duty to residents, suggesting that all of Wayne County can be certified except for Detroit. It's horrifyingly racist and a subversion of our democracy. She kept going. A majority Black cities' votes don't count. Is this what they are saying? And here is where she upped it from 80 to 85%. So an 85% Black cities' votes don't count. And these are all the tweets just from one person and her retweets. And like I said, people started coming out and talking about these people and what schools their children went to, threatening them, all of this horrible, horrible stuff. So in the end, they decided, okay, you know what? We will certify the results after all. So this is from Daily Caller, where they did vote to certify the results. Certifying the results after a 2-2 deadlock earlier Tuesday evening, numerous sources reported. Now, what's interesting is that they said that in the end, they did not decide to certify the results because of the backlash and the public pressure, and instead, they said it was because the Secretary of State agreed to conduct an audit of precincts in the county that had discrepancies, according to CBS News. And that is why they switched positions, because they were promised an audit. Well, that was what was said to get them to certify the results. All of a sudden, oh, well, this changed. That's really disappointing. This was originally a different article, and it seems like it refreshed. Well, so the Secretary of State ended up going back on her word. And now Wayne County Republicans, these two canvassers who voted to certify the results, are now trying to backtrack again and rescind their votes to certify the election. So when they voted to certify, what it really did is that it cleared the way for the Board of State Canvassers to certify the statewide count scheduled for November 23rd. But Palmer and Hartman are moving to rescind their votes, both signing affidavits claiming they were pressured and misled during the Tuesday meeting, which could throw a wrench into the process of making Michigan's results official. But we all know that state officials like to throw their weight around and do whatever they want and tend to not follow their word. So the Secretary of State is now saying that there's no legal mechanism for them to rescind their vote, and is now saying that Well, she didn't think that her promise to audit was binding. So the Secretary of State is now saying, well, we're not going to do an audit now because that would be silly. The job is done, she says, and the next step in the process is for the Board of State Canvassers to meet and certify. Now, Palmer says that in her affidavit, she only agreed to certify the results of the election if an independent audit were conducted to determine why there were a number of imbalanced precincts in the county's results. But pretty much immediately after voting to certify, she was sent statements from Secretary Jocelyn Benson saying that she did not view our audit resolution to be binding. And so now that there's an affidavit about this, we don't really know what's going to go on with this at all. But people are freaking out, saying, well, you can't rescind your vote. Doesn't matter that the Secretary of State is now walking back her promise to do an audit. That's just the way things are. You voted. We pressured you into voting and you did it, and now that's that. So I'm not really sure. That was just developing today, so I'm not really sure where that's going to go. If courts are going to look at that affidavits, if there is going to be an investigation into this. But bottom line, it shows that you can't trust your government. They're going to make promises to you and they're going to break them, especially if it means ensuring that their guy is the one that wins. We have some super chats that came through, so I will check those out for you guys. And I'm going to keep an eye on this story and see what happens with it. Because, I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. I'm surprised that it's sort of the rug is pulled out from them in such broad daylight, but I'm not entirely surprised it happened, if that makes sense. Christoph says, got a bucket and a luau shirt. I have found that since moving south, my bullshit bucket and tolerance for some of this stuff that goes on in the media and on social media and with people I used to know, my tolerance of it is a lot less these days. The Great Douchebag says, Liberty, do you still believe that Trump can win? Honestly, at this point, I think that it is unlikely. To my knowledge, there's a whole bunch of lawsuits, and a whole bunch of those lawsuits are getting thrown out. In Georgia, they found all of these GOP votes, and Trump actually broke a record with how many votes were found in the recount. And right before I came on, I saw headlines that now they are saying that it went to Biden anyways. I know that in New Hampshire, there were some counties that did recounts and found a whole bunch of GOP votes. I believe it was like 10% in some of those counties. Windham, New Hampshire, I believe, was one of the areas where they found a 10% discrepancy that all ended up going to GOP. Doesn't matter. I think that people are going to find votes or discount votes where they need to do it. And I think even if there was a chance and something happened, my God, I mean, the left would just explode. Absolutely explode. And I think that people, there are people that are afraid of what that would look like. Robin Patty says, regardless of who is certified, half of the population will not accept it. And with all of the fraud and accidents in this election, they shouldn't. I do agree with that. I don't think, I don't see how Georgia could have gone blue, for example. I don't see how a lot of this is possible. I do know that the Oath Keepers came out and they didn't specifically say that they weren't going to accept the results, but they said that they believed about half of the country wouldn't accept the results. And I know that the Oath Keepers is about 35,000 strong. So, I mean, that's a few people right there. That's for sure. Rob Allen said, how did Kim do? I hope she made a good showing. I'm not actually sure. That's something that I've been meaning to check in on. Dragon's Talon says poll taxes, Jim Crow laws, segregation, voting against the 1964-65 Civil Rights Act, and the Klan were all Dem policies. True. Yet Repub's not certifying illegal votes is racist. WTF. It is curious, isn't it, that those were all Democrat policies. And like you said, now these people are actually doing their jobs and looking into why there are all these issues. And suddenly, ooh, that's racist. And actually, according to the Detroit Free Press, this same county had a 59% discrepancy back in 2016, and no one did anything about that one. So now it's even bigger, and that's even more questionable. Rob Allen says, what's up with this Kraken crap? I'm not sure. I think someone posted some video calling out some things and talking about some lawsuits or some evidence that they had and stuff that they were going to be filing. That happened, I think, just a few hours ago, and I haven't really seen and looked into it yet. Torque One says, Rudy stated that all the lawsuits thrown out were not from Trump. Okay. Well, I know that there were some voter groups that also filed lawsuits. And I know that some of those, several of those at least, were expected to get thrown out because they didn't seem to carry a lot of weight. And Jonathan Stevie says Trump doesn't need to win. He just needs to keep the states from certifying so it flips to House delegation. That, at this point, would probably be the only way that he could make it happen. But it's funny because on the one hand, folks are focusing on voter fraud, and for quite some time, we're not focusing on this possible strategy. But now that it's starting to be reported in more of the legacy media outlets that is a possibility, albeit a small one, according to them, it seems like some of these blue areas are working to speed up the process to make sure that doesn't happen, which, I mean, is understandable in a way. Like, if you are a Democrat and you believe that this election was one fair and square, and then, you know, all of your media sources and all of your liberal friends and all of your liberal family members on the left are telling you that this is a coup or an attempt to steal the election, well, then, of course, you know, if that's what you truly believe, then you're going to try to do everything you can to stop it. You know, the bad guys always think that they are doing the right thing, right? Bad guys always think that they are doing the right thing for the community or for themselves or for the greater good or whatever. So I can see where they're coming from. I don't think that they should be trying to bypass the Constitution. Clearly, that means you're in the wrong if you're trying to bypass all these legal processes that were specifically put in place for this reason. But I can see why they're doing it and where they're coming from. Let's see. And so that is it for the super chats. Q says that YouTube told him that robust safeguards help ensure the integrity of elections and results. And, you know, there are a lot of people that are saying, well, there's no evidence of systemic voter fraud. And they say that and they mean that usually at a federal level. And it might not be that there was federal systemic planned voter fraud, but certainly we have, you know, in this one county, again, 71% of precincts had a discrepancy where voter rolls did not match the ballots. We've had similar issues in Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, all of these places, all of these swing states. And even if it wasn't people somehow working together, pulling the strings all at the same time in these states, even if it was just individual actors working by themselves in all of these different states, I mean, I would say that that could be considered systemic, whether or not it was organized together or not. That is a sign of a major, major problem. In Georgia alone, they found 3 different counties where the memory sticks with the results were scanned but never like inputted into the computer. 3 is a pattern. A pattern is systemic. So it'll be really interesting to see where this goes and what happens with these 2 canvassers and any accompanying lawsuits, and what happens on the 23rd when the board meets again to certify the state. If there's any resistance to that, I will try to keep you guys updated for that. And Kelly Karshner says he's quoting Joe Biden when he said that they created the largest voter fraud organization ever. El Hurst says, so I am bowing down to the left. I mean, I'm not in Michigan. I have no control over what's happening in Michigan or any of these other states, nor am I involved in the lawsuits, nor am I a lawyer. So I'm reporting. I'm not bending anything because I'm not involved. But I mean, everyone has their own opinion, and if that's what you think, then that's what you think. So that is it for today and for this stream. This one went longer than I intended it to as well, but hopefully everyone found it informative. Rob Allen says, I've heard of many voters in Washington were registered in multiple states. Have you heard anything about that? Like 3,000 votes in one county. I have heard that about different people. And they're saying, oh, well, it's people that registered to vote there and then, moved out of state. But I know of at least one incident where a guy said that he didn't vote and a vote was cast in his name. And that's just one. So, I'm sure that happened to more than one person. We have all the Project Veritas videos coming out about all the things going on at the post office and the mailman handing out blank ballots to people and all of this crazy stuff. But again, so that is it for this stream. I will be doing my normal Friday night stream tomorrow. That's more of like a hangout chat for a lot of folks. Hopefully, people that don't typically like the longer videos at least found this informative. I tried to shove as much information in your face as possible. If you liked this and you want to make more videos like this happen, or more videos, period, please consider sharing the video, liking it, dropping a comment to help the algorithms, checking out the partners, or donating to the channel with any of these support options listed down there. I don't know why I did a square for that. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in on such a short notice. And I will see you guys tomorrow night. Stay safe. Good night.